Am I on back there? All right, it's at 9 o'clock and time to get started. Want to welcome everybody. I'm Chairman Stan Jones, and we're going to do this January 24 meeting, the Arkansas Game and Fish. Before we call the meeting to order, I want to recognize a few people here that's, I don't know that I would want to say guest, but Wildman, Steve Wilson, we're glad to have you here, as you're here just about every month. Ronnie Ritter, where are you, Ronnie? Glad to have you. Hunters Feeding the Hungry. And Brian Hendricks. I don't know if I'm going to say guest or we're glad to have you as well. Brian, it's good to see you. Hey, I'll now call this meeting to the order of the Arkansas Game and Fish. And the first thing to get started, ask Director Austin Booth if you'll say the prayer.
Sure. If y'all please stand and join me in prayer. Holy Father, we thank you for this day and the many blessings that you've prepared for us. We thank you for the incredible state that we live in and the privilege it is to enjoy these natural resources that you've given us. We ask that you would bless our meeting today, that today and every day that you would give the people of this agency the wisdom to shepherd and cultivate these resources in a way that serve the people now, that honor you, and that can help give the people of our future the same resources that we've enjoyed, but even better. We ask that you would be with people that are traveling today, be with our game wardens and law enforcement partners as they're in the field in this bad weather. We ask that you would grant them safety. We thank you most of all for Christ Jesus, and we pray these things in his name. Amen.
Thank you, Director Booth. For those who would like to, we'll share the pledges of allegiance right now. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first matter is approval of today's agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda as presented?
Move to approve.
Can I have a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. I need approval of the notes. Or can I have a motion for the approval?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First matter is staff presentations, and Randy Brentz will give an update on the prescribed fire.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, Director. Just want to introduce Randy real quick. So Randy had he's almost 10 years in the agency, and most of that was with the Wildlife Management Division. So Duggar and I fought over who introduced him today, because now he's, for the past 2 months, October, okay, whatever, how many months that is. Randy moved over to help out in our Private Lands Habitat Division as an assistant chief. So he helped us as Brad worked to upgrade, improve, ramp up, I guess, our prescribed fire work in the Wildlife Management Division. Hired Randy on to take on that role almost 10 years ago and did a great job for us. So he's kind of presenting what he worked on with the Wildlife Management Division, although of course it carries over in everything we're doing on private lands too. So it's Randy Brentz, thanks.
Good morning, Commissioners, Director. I never thought 10 years ago that I would kind of come full circle to being up here and giving my last presentation as the fire coordinator. But when we got to thinking about what information we wanted to cover, it was really important for me to kind of back up to 10 years ago and talk about why we're burning. We have a lot of new faces in here that was in on the front end and had the information of why it is that we do prescribed fire. So I want to back up all the way to 1818. Henry Schoolcraft was a horrible explorer. He about died, about starved to death, about froze to death. He traveled for 90 days, over 900 miles through the Missouri Ozarks and down into Arkansas Ozarks, and he chronicled everything that he ran into. And one of the things that he mentions is a lack of food and water on the land, or water and wood on the landscape. He doesn't mention the horses having a lack of food or anything like that. He says, we about froze to death, we couldn't find wood on the landscape. And so what we can glean from that is that there was frequent fire on the landscape. If there's not a stick laying out there that you can build a fire with, that's an issue. You think about Arkansas in its current day, you don't have a problem finding any firewood out on the landscape. You move forward to 1841, George Catlin's in Missouri, and he's talking about the vast prairies burning over every year in the fall and early spring. One important thing there is he mentions that it's in the fall and in the spring. So we know that Native Americans set fire to the landscape to attract game for hunting in the spring, but the historical fire season would have been in the fall. You see these paintings, and what you can get from those is we don't see a cedar tree in those paintings. We don't see a mature oak tree in those paintings. We see vast prairies, grass dominated. The head fire is low flame lengths. The animals are laying in their lairs. They're not moving till the flame front reaches them. So very slow moving fire, not very intense. They stand up and step over the flames and walk into the black. So that just tells you frequent fire on the landscape, low fuel loads, not very fast moving fires. We move into the 1900s, and this is where the issue begins. Westward expansion, the railroads come apart. 1905, the U.S. Forest Service is formed, and they're charged with protecting the American forest. They start putting out ads like this. Remember, there are babes in the woods. Smokey Bear is one of the most successful marketing campaigns in the history of the United States. Disney comes out with Bambi. Scares people to death. You're burning up every animal out there in the woods. And then you get into these wartime ads where they actually strike fear in people's hearts with these images that, hey, these are our carelessness is their weapon. We're burning down our resources. So what you see today is a forest that looks like this. This looks nothing like that painting of a prairie with deer laying there and stepping over flames, right? This is about as natural as the animal that took this picture, okay? What we do know is that fire is very important in the landscape. Norwalk and Adams back in 2008 talked about the importance of fire and what it looked like pre-1900 to the foreseeable future. We are in that foreseeable future right now. That's where we're at. A very dense forest that has decreased flammability due to mesophytic trees and humid microclimates. We've had elm, maple, all these tree species that historically would have been confined to north-facing and east-facing slopes down in river bottoms that have moved their way up in topography and have changed the flammability of our forest to now where we have these choked-out forests that do not look anything like the pre-1900 conditions. This loss of plant-animal communities directly result from this happening, and the loss of productive timber, which is a renewable resource. Not only do we have the personal accounts from explorers, we have the science to back it up. Dan Day and others looked at fire frequency, and they've looked at it a lot of different ways, through tree ring analysis, through the chemistry of the chemistry of climate. Everything they put out lines up with Arkansas 2 to 10 year fire return interval across the landscape, depending on the ecoregion. The Grand Valley would have burned more frequently than the Ozarks and the Ouachitas would have burned. You see that in these maps. It's hard to see, but the Ozarks and Ouachitas are in that yellow range. It's more 8 to 10 year fire return interval in some of those slopes up there in the northwest face of slopes. South face of slopes have burned more frequently. Voti and Glenn in 91 examined weather data and determined thunderstorm probability and lightning strike capability and probability across the landscape. What we found is that July through September timeframe, we have less thunderstorms, and they're dry thunderstorms that time of year, but more fires set from lightning strikes. So that's telling us something about the seasonality that we historically would have seen on the landscape. Stanbaugh and others, along with Guyette, also looked at Native American population densities in relation to fire occurrence on the landscape. And it's pretty easy to see that these are very strongly correlated, right? So Native Americans, we know, are strong users of fire to influence the environment around them. When Cherokee density was high on the landscape, fire frequency was also high on the landscape. When Cherokee density dropped on the landscape, fire frequency dropped on the landscape. There's actually another study that shows population density of European settlers in Russellville, Arkansas in the 1900s. As that population climbed, the fire frequency directly dropped on the landscape. So it's very tied together. We know all this by these tree ring analysis. You can't really read the text on that, but that tree, they can take these, this is shortleaf pine stump or relic from the Ozarks here in Arkansas. But they can go back and determine when fire touched that tree and scarred that tree in the growth. And then tie that directly to certain populations of people being on the landscape. And something they're doing now that's even neater is they're actually able to start tying this to seasonality. So they have a method scientifically to tell us when a lot of these fires occurred. Was that during the spring, the fall, or during that dormant season? And they're actually finding in the Missouris that over 50% of those fires did happen in the late fall. So what's our solution getting back to our historical context? How do we get back to our desired conditions? Well, the answer now is prescribed fire. We don't have a lot of large wildfires or lightning struck that are allowed to burn naturally for days. We have some in the Ozarks and the National Forest. We're able to do that, and some on some WMAs. But typically, those fires get extinguished, and we use prescribed fire to accomplish our goals and objectives. We have to be knowledgeable with it. It has to be on specific land area, under exacting weather conditions, with well-defined objectives. We just don't go out there and throw a match on the ground. We write a 10-plate, it's normally around 10 pages, prescribed fire burn plan that takes into account everything that could happen that day and how we get to our goals and objectives with our burn plan. The goal is to replicate these natural ecological processes in the form of disturbance. These acres out there, if we can think about them, if you think about this slide as 1 acre of land, if you walk away from it, if you take your yard and you walk away from it, everybody's familiar with this. What does it do? Completely grows up, right? Succession takes over, your yard becomes thick, and it becomes less useful to you as a family to play in it or whatever. The same thing for wildlife. If you walk away from that forest, succession takes hold. And what we have is things like mourning doves and northern bobwhites that can use a very small part of that acre. And as it succeeds on, we have red-bellied woodpeckers and plated woodpeckers that can use a part of that forest. They cannot use that entire acre. They're confined to that one subset of time in that acre as it succeeds. But a properly managed forest, when it's been managed with forestry now and prescribed fire, we find that that whole acre is usable. So mourning dove and northern bobwhite can now use this whole range of the forest, and they even overlap with these species that require that mature timber. So they're together. So we have greater diversity over time. Frequent fire generally creates this higher plant and animal diversity and abundance on the landscape. If we can take away one thing, frequent and strategic implementation of prescribed burning is critical in shifting and maintaining these habitats and desired conditions. We can do everything in the world to get a stand to look like that. If we do not put fire in it and walk away from it, it will grow back up, I promise you. So what have we done since really 2014? I threw out 2014's data. That was the first year I was here, and it rained a lot that year. And then we burned like 7,000 acres that year. It was horrible. And it was really because of it rained the entire burn season. I started in February of that year. So I took 2015 data to current. 15 to 19 is the average. The blue is the average for 2015 to 19. Red, the average for 2020 to 2023. And then green is 23, so it'd be this last calendar year. Our goal when I first started, the first thing we recognized is we are not burning enough. We're not putting enough fire on the landscape. We're averaging around 10,000 acres a year. We're burning at the wrong time of the year, and we're not helping our partners. So that was our three kind of things that we were really targeting with the burn program when we started. We got to get more fire on the landscape. It's got to be the right time of year, and we've got to get more fire where we can help our partners. The Forest Service owns 3 million acres in the state. Why are we not helping them burn 30,000 acres a year? We weren't back in 2014. So you can see we've really tried to target that, and we've ramped up. We've shifted from burning 0 acres in 2014 in the growing season, and now we're burning right 5,000 acres per year in the July through September timeframe. Huge shift. 50% of our burn units are now taking place in the growing season. It's only 25% of our acres because the burns are smaller, they're less intense, they're slower. but more than 50% of our actual burn units are targeted in that growing season now. We went from that 14,000 acres a year to this last fiscal year, we burned 31,000 acres on WMAs and private lands. We went from burning around 12,500 acres with our partners in those first few years. Now we're every year exceeding nearly 30,000 acres prescribed fire with our partners on the landscape. And how did we get there? And I can't harp on this enough. I did not put fire on every one of those acres. I was not on every one of those burns. It was our staff. Our staff stepped forward and dedicated themselves to a burn program that they didn't have to do. I didn't supervise any of these staff. They stepped forward, and we did it through staff excellence. Our staff attended 3,708 more hours per year in fire training than they did in 2015. We took a lot of money and invested in our staff to train them. What does fire look like? How do we put fire on the ground? How do we accomplish our goals? And this directly led to those increase in numbers. Some key points, and I'm done, I promise. I know I'm talking pretty fast. Fire is an important ecological part of our landscape, but it's not enough anymore. Our forests have gotten to a point where forest management has to take place. We have to thin our timber. We have to do chemical injection. We have to reduce density through forest practices. Fire alone cannot do it. These trees have gotten too big for fire to kill and take them back off the landscape. It's good after you do the treatment as a maintenance tool to keep it in that state. We have to have forest practice to get there. Site selection is critical. We cannot take every piece of game and fish property out there and say that's a prairie or that's oak woodland. It's just not. We have to look at our forest inventory data and figure out what is that site telling us. What tree species are there, and historically, what would that site have been? And then we have something to aim at. We have that historical context to put a target on and try to get there. We have to be aggressive. Some of our best looking sites on our WMAs and private lands are places where we have been really, really, really aggressive. It looks bad the first few years. You're doing a lot of work in a short amount of time. You have to have a long-term commitment. If I restore a site and I start putting fire there, and I do it for 2 or 3 years and I walk away, and I promise you, we're going right back to where we were at. Once you start putting fire on a spot, you have to keep putting it on there. And it will become the major influence in maintaining structures and diverse species composition. Once it's in that restored state, there is a tipping point where you're into maintenance. And fire is your major influencer at that point to maintain it and hold it in that state. We have to be careful in our planning and implementation, especially during initial entry. Usually we have higher fuel loads. There's a lot of things that's happened out there. Now, if we're not careful, we can do a lot of damage. We have to be careful with that. And then we have to mimic our historical burn periods. We know that fire happened on the landscape in the fall. That's our historical time frame. We have to get fire back into that growing season time frame to enhance species diversity. And with that, I'll take any questions.
You said the right time to burn. When is the right time to burn?
Every burn unit's different. It's depending on goals and objectives per burn unit. Some burn units we purposely target them in February. Some we purposely target in March. Some are purposely targeted in August.
And then what you're purposely targeting in the fall because of what, gum, saplings,
Part of it.
Station out there?
Right. This site in this picture here was a site that was historically had been burned every year or every other year in the February-March time frame. And so that one didn't have a lot of gums. A lot of sites do. They have a lot of gums or other tree species that we're trying to knock out with fall fire. But that site in particular was a grass-dominated site. We put one fire in there in the growing season in July, I think July 17th of 2020. This is the 23rd of July, a year later, and there's virtually no grass on that site. It's forb-dominated. You're talking about species diversity for pollinators. I mean, I don't think there's many people that can look at that picture and say it looks bad. For wildlife, that's fantastic.
A great example. All that y'all done out there is fabulous.
Camp Robinson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's you, Meg.
I was at some of that fire.
I think it'd be interesting to see some before and after stuff. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but, as you're beginning a new burn program at a certain spot that you're going to continue, I'd like to see, a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year before and after.
We have some of that, specifically like Stone Prairie WMA and Wattensaw and others. We have photo points that we put in before some of the forest practices started taking place there. So you're seeing that shift, as the forest density drops, as the fire goes in, you're seeing that shift in the understory and the species composition through a photo series.
Well, I think that would help with some of the private lands people to
I
participate.
totally agree.
You know, because some of that's just, they're worried about it or scared of what it, it's
Yeah,
like
so
you said,
we were talking to
the
our
first
staff
2 years is
about,
ugly.
we're talking to our staff about some of these programs, and I did a lot of program when I was in the Wildlife Division, starting back in 2017. I did EQIP and some other Acres for Wildlife, a lot of practices on our place. We did $30,000 worth of work just on our property. And most of the landowners I've ever sold in a practice, I've shown them pictures of my place. Like, I've told our staff, like, take pictures of the example and show them pictures of what it looks like right when you first start to. Show them the ugly of it. This is what it's going to look like, but, in 5 years, you can look like this.
Right.
But those pictures, man, you can really sell someone on doing the work if you show them what it would look like in the end.
Randy, our private burn associations have been ramping up over the last couple of years. Do you see us getting momentum with that? Or are we kind of flat? Where is that program?
The burn associations have really been picking up, and there's one right now that's really trying to ramp up and get a nonprofit status to be kind of an umbrella over the rest of them. That's going to open up a lot of possibilities for them. There's still a lot of interest out there. For the last 3 years, really, you can go back to when the PBA started, but every year in Arkansas, we're setting records. We burned over 300,000 acres in the state last year. Never we exceeded over 300,000 acres. The year before we set a record, So as these programs are built, we're seeing the results in what the Forestry Division has reported to them.
Great.
So, hey, Randy, looking at this is the poster child for everywhere I'd go. I'd bring this as my sales pitch. That picture is beautiful. And I'm thankful my wife's not here today. We'd burn the entire planet of everything we own just to get this. Real quick, if you're looking at, just take an area that we have, it's kind of forested, it's never been burned. I mean, so you wonder, your first burn, what's that first burn going to be like? Is it going to total burn? Is it going to take a long time to burn? You know what I mean? Things that have been there for a long time and dormant, and year after year after year, leaves and vegetation that have fallen.
It depends on tree species. So if it's still like a oak, hickory dominated site, you're going to have the fuel load to carry and fire across that whole site.
Yeah.
I'll say this. You have to be aggressive. So when you're ready to start forest management, thinning, injection, whatever, if you can get 3 burns on that site in the first 5 years, you're on the right foot. I like to do back-to-back on year 1 and 2, and then give it a 2-year break and come back on year 3 and burn it again. You're not going to get complete burns maybe that second year or third year. But the key is you have to get those grasses and forbs a chance. If you don't, the shrub layer will overtake them. So you've got to keep putting fire on that landscape.
So often we, the fall burn or the late winter burning is kind of considered by a lot of hunters. We get a lot of complaints about the late fall burning. Tell us why we're doing that so we can tell the public.
Our late fall burning is targeting 2 things usually. It'd be a site like this one, but if you can imagine it covered in sweet gum saplings. We're trying to knock back that sapling layer. It shouldn't be there. That's a prairie site. There shouldn't be trees on it, period. It's a prairie. So we're trying to hit those on the head. Or we're trying to increase forb diversity. It's a grass-dominated site, and we're trying to increase that forb diversity. A lot of times as we restore these sites to desired conditions, we're trying to shift that burn pattern back in the historical time frame, which is going to push us into that fall time frame to do that.
When you burn in the fall like that, does that not affect quail habitat, turkey habitat, as far as them hiding in the grass and even deer to bed down in some of those grass things?
Yes and no. In the landscape context, no. These fall burns are smaller in scale than the spring burn. I would argue that the spring burn is actually more harmful from a habitat standpoint over scale, because these burns are typically, I think our average fall burns around 20 acres. When you get your average dormant season burns around 300. So you're talking about a totally different scale. Neat thing about fall burns, there's actually vertical structure left out there. You take a quail, Camp Robinson SUA or anywhere else, and a spot that's burned in the fall, you usually have all that vertical structures left. It doesn't moonscape. So they still have that cover over their head, whereas a dormant season burn is just going to be like a moonscape out there. It's going to be just slick black.
Few questions, Randy. Number one, I'm going to take JD's question. and focus it a little bit more. In Natural State Tomorrow, we set a goal to establish 5 PBAs over 5 years. Where are we at with that 18 months into Natural State Tomorrow?
I think we're at 7 or 8, 9. We're at 9 now.
Well done.
Right.
Well done. The second question is, coming in this agency, I had no experience with prescribed fire at all. I've been absolutely blown away to see not only the science behind it, but the extreme lengths that y'all go through to look at a piece of land, know where you want to go on the other side of it, and then think about how you administer fire, 1, and 2, do that in conjunction with the forest health side of things. So I've been blown away at that. Now, for people that may be here today or may be listening this morning, they have heard you talk a lot about what the Native Americans used to do. And, terms like, pre-settlement savanna. Some of us don't understand what that means. What people do understand is that we manage for habitat, we manage for wildlife. So can you help us understand the connection between pre-settlement conditions and why that's what's best for wildlife, and therefore the sportsman?
So our pre-settlement conditions would have been more diverse habitats. That's the short answer. It'd have been more open landscapes. You'd have had shrub, scrub layers across the landscape. You had different varying levels of forest, density levels, depending on how fire burned across the landscape. So instead of one monotone out there, just a mature forest with nothing but leaf litter for tens of thousands of acres like we have now in places, you'd have had areas that have been freshly burned. You'd had areas that are really open, areas that are really dense, more north-facing slopes. You'd have had all these different varying levels of habitat across the landscape. So if you think about a life cycle of a northern bobwhite or a wild turkey or a deer, name it, they have to have different habitat structures at different points in their life. And they don't have that in an area where fire has been excluded from the landscape. It's just not there. It's just one ecotope.
Thank you.
Randy, great presentation. And you've obviously researched this well, and I think this bodes well for the public and all of us. If I went and talked to Garrett, I've done this, and you just get such a satisfaction when you've seen it on your own land. I think if we talk to Garrett, I bet the majority of the PLB's clients or landowners feel the same way. I have a perception, however, and we heard it yesterday, that the public land hunter has a disconnect from this. They're on the opposite end of the spectrum. How do we maybe devote more of those 3,700 increased hours to getting education to that that common man segment, that aren't landowners, that haven't seen this real life? Why don't you take that and give us some suggestions?
That's kind of a tricky question because, you can look at doing press releases, all kind of. You have to get it in their hands, right? And you have to get them to a site but they see the effect. When we hear from our constituents, it's when it's black and it looks bad and smoking, and they didn't, they was going to hunt that tomorrow and we burned it today, that type of thing. We have to somehow figure out how to get them back out there and educate them that came about because of the fire. And yeah, it looks great. They can see that today. They'll tell you they love it. That place looks great out there, but they don't connect. That's because it was burned a year ago. And I think that's where the message is missing is. We've tried doing auto tour. A lot of our auto tours have pictures of burning, talk about burning. There's a lot of things out there.
That's why I think you need to be recording this before and after of every fire that we're doing because, they're all going to be better, but some of them are going to be spectacular. We need to make sure that we recorded that so that when someone like yesterday is upset about fire or burning, this is where we're headed.
Yeah, I can think of areas like Harold E. Alexander where we took in over 1,000 stems per acre of cedar trees. We took off the landscape and started putting fire in there. And this is Ozarks, highland savanna habitat. Looks fabulous right now. You wouldn't believe it if you look at the photo series what it used to be. You don't think it's the same spot. And like you said, those photo series are really selling. We've had people stop us on that WMA and thank us for the work that's done there because they love it. They're seeing more turkeys there. They're seeing bigger deer there. We're picking up quail in our call counts now. So we're seeing the benefit. It just takes a while to get there.
Hey, so Randy, what are we doing as far as not just social media, but on a web presence? Do we have part of our website dedicated to PLBs to where people can look at WMAs and schedules of burnings coming, some of the results in the past of the before, during, and afters that we could drive people to that talk to us about, hey, I was going to go there, and then show them, what they could expect next year when they see that. That may be the most effective way if we could devote some of our web page to the PLB side to drive that where folks can actually go in there and see what should be coming.
Right, and we talked about that. I mean, Luke and I talked about it. We're going to work on, like, I think about a month before I took this job, we talked about launching a prescribed fire page. Like when you click on that habitat,
That'd be good.
having a prescribed fire page that has pictures, talks about prescribed fire, why it's important, why a burn plan is important. We got the qualified prescribed burner legislation. Now it was going to have that link, the process to become a qualified prescribed burner. And then things kind of, I took a new position and we haven't been able to fill that slot yet. So it's on the work. I would say that.
Yeah.
I would like to see that come to fruition.
I think it'd be
That
real
side to be
beneficial
launched.
if you had certain folders in there where I could go look at a particular WMA or the special use area and just go into that folder and see the areas of what it used to be, when we burned it, and what the results were a year later, and when we're getting scheduled to burn it in 24, whatever that is.
Right.
Just so somebody who, again, there are a lot of people who they just want to complain but can't do anything about that, but a lot of people who truly want to dial into this and understand it, giving them the necessary tools to be educated and be a part of the program or a solution, I don't think you can go wrong with that at all.
There's a big interest out there. We're seeing it with the CIP applications, the incentive program we just launched. We're seeing nearly 200 people put in for the prescribed fire break and prescribed burning practice. So we're getting a lot of interest in the few practices, and fires, one of them is right up there with the feral hog program.
Bob, you're exactly right, because education is everything, because when, you talk to somebody and they don't want you to cut or burn, and, there's not a lot left to manage with. And so education would greatly bridge that gap.
Randy, thank you for your presentation. It was pretty awesome.
Thank you all.
Very much. All right, next part of our agenda is Director Austin Booth, and he will deliver the director's report.
Good morning, everybody. Glad to see the audience here this morning, and grateful that everybody made it safely this morning as well. I want to start off my update this morning by just recognizing what we all know, that we're in the fourth quarter now of duck season. Deer season will be over next month, and this will be another hunting season under our belts, and want to give the deepest gratitude possible to all the agency staff that made this hunting season what it was. You never know going into it what the challenges are going to be, and for us, that was obviously a license system rollout, some challenges at Lake Ashbaugh, and then, of course, like always, supporting public safety throughout the state, and could not be more proud of this agency and y'all's very hard work this hunting season. This prescribed fire update and some of the trailing comments in Randy's great presentation are a perfect segue into what I wanted to use most of my time this morning to talk about. That's our conservation incentive program. When I started this job in 2021, I was particularly struck by two things. Number one, just the sheer number and complexity of the conservation challenges that we focus, and the limited capacity that this agency has, like any government agency, to fix all of those problems. The other thing that I was really taken back by is the passion that we have from private landowners to support conservation on their own land, and also to do more and more and more every single year. These two realizations were the inspiration behind our conservation incentive program, which is an effort to not only expand the scale of what we're doing for the natural resources, both on our public lands and also outside of it, but also to bring more people alongside this agency and build a broader tent for conservation. The Conservation Incentive Program launched on January 2nd under the outstanding leadership of our first ever Private Lands Division Chief, Garrick Duggar, who you all know well. And he has done a tremendous job in pulling a team together within his division and getting cooperation and support from other divisions to make not only the Conservation Incentive Program, but the new Private Lands Division a tremendous success in its first 18 months. Since January 2nd, we've been flooded with applications for the Conservation Incentive Program. For those that are listening that may not be familiar, it is a very flexible program aimed at private landowners where we want to incentivize you all to undertake conservation best practices for your land. I encourage you to check it out on our website, and if you are interested, to submit an application. We have over 650 applicants for the Conservation Incentive Program. In less than a month into the program, it will run for the duration of calendar year 24. And if there is any kind of interest from private landowners out there whatsoever to do anything for conservation on your land, I can assure you that there's a practice for you. These range from cost share incentives on feral hog traps. Like Randy said, there's also an incredibly popular incentive to help landowners not only put fire down, but also put fire breaks in. We also are doing stream bank stabilization programs, timber stand improvement, moist soil creation, and even trying to open up private waters for public fishing. But as proud as I am of Randy, of Melissa, of Garrick, of the entire Private Lands Division staff for pulling this together and seeing incredible results in less than a month, I don't want there to be any mistake what this is ultimately about. It's not about this agency, but it's about the shared vision of conservation that we have in Arkansas. Meaning for so much of our Arkansas identity, that's connected to having wild places and wild things. This agency has never been able to do it alone, and we can't do it alone going forward. And so we're asking private landowners to come alongside us and join us in the Conservation Incentive Program. Lastly, I would be remiss if I did not recognize the fact that this program was supported not only by our governor, but by the legislature, and we would not be here seeing the results that we are now if it were not for their support. So thank them.
Thank you, Director. At this time, the committee chairs will deliver reports from Wednesday's committee meetings. As chair of the Regulations Committee, Commissioner Doremus, will you give that report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. The Regulations Committee met yesterday. We had 4 discussion items. Ryan Gary presented on the current use of anonymous location data by the Fisheries Division, which was actually very, very informative and something that we're looking to expand to other departments as well. Next, Sarah Baxter gave an overview of social media efforts by Fisheries Division. Then our Waterfowl Program Coordinator, Brett Leach, gave an update on waterfowl monitoring efforts. And finally, Brad Carner gave a report to the Commission on upcoming regulation cycle. There were no action items, no new business, no old business, and we were adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner Doremus. Next is Commissioner Finley, Chair of the Property Management Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a busy day yesterday with a number of action items. We had no discussion items. On our action items included 4 items, one being Emily Shoemate presented a minute order requesting the removal of 2 inventory items reported as lost. The 2 items had an original value of $5,230.75 and a present net book value of $0. The committee gave a due pass. Next, Colonel Brad Young presented a minute order requesting the removal, award, and sale of a service weapon to retiring law enforcement Sergeant Glenn T. Pointfield, who has served over 21 years of service with the Game and Fish. And I must say, this is probably always one of our more favorable things to do is to award them with their sidearm. That committee, again, was given a due pass. Kevin Mullen presented a couple of minute orders, or a couple of action items, presented a minute order requesting approval of land acquisition to add 20 acres to Cypress Bayou WMA in White County. The committee did give that a due pass. And then we combined two other action items into one. Kevin Mullen presented 2-minute orders requesting approval of a land acquisition to add 494 acres to the Jamestown WMA in Independence County. The committee gave a unanimous do pass on both minute orders. There were no new business, no old business, and we were adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner Finley. Next, we have Commissioner Bill Jones, Chair of the Education and Communications.
Thank you, Chairman. Like I said, we met yesterday, and we had one discussion item. We had a very energetic meeting. The Deputy Director, Spencer Griffin, introduced Chris Willard and Gene Noble with the PAYET, Arkansas Game and Fish's licensed vendor. The group provided us an update about the agency's new licensing system and mobile app. They discussed the many changes and problems that have been discovered since launch, the impacts of the customers and staff, and the path to timeline and resolution. PAYET will also provide another update to the Commission in the May committee meeting. So it was quite an interesting comment and time, and we learned quite a bit. We had no action items, we had no new business, and we had no old business, and we were adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Next is Commissioner Dr. Evans White, Chair of the Research Review Committee.
Thanks, Chairman Jones. Yesterday, the Research Review Committee met, and Jessica Feltz provided an overview of the process of obtaining public input for proposed regulation changes. Regulation changes are proposed every 2 years. The 30-day public input process for 2024 will begin this February. We had no action items, new business, or old business, and we were adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner Evans White. Next, we have Commissioner J.D. Neely, Chair of the Budget Committee.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Committee was called to order. We had one discussion item. Emily Shoemate presented us a good financial status report update. It's good to see her back. And we had no action item, no new business, no old business, and we were adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner Neely. Next is Commissioner Tappan, Chair of the Personnel Governance Committee.
Well, good morning, all. Mr. Chairman, the Personnel Governance and Personnel Governance Committee met. We had one discussion item, which was General Counsel Jim Goodhart provided a legal report. There were no action items, no new business, no old business. We did go into an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. It convened at 2:44 and was adjourned at 3:02 with no action taken.
Thank you, Commissioner Tappan. Lastly, as Chair of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, I will give that report. Jen Sheehan, Chair of the Environmental Coordination Division, gave an update on Biomeda irrigation project, which was really great. Jen was glad to hear that. It's been going on. How long has that project been going on? Did we ever decide yesterday?
It was, the general reevaluation report came out in 2010.
You know, when I first got on, Joe Morgan took and showed me that, and we went and looked at it, and at that time, he said, I don't know how long it's been since these motors have been started or run or anything. They're just sitting there, and didn't you say that just here not too long ago, y'all started all this and made sure everything still works?
Yes, sir.
It's been a long project, hasn't it? Well, thank you for your work on that. That's a lot. There were no action items, no new business, and no old business, and the meeting was adjourned. Next, we'll go to commission items. Now for the business items being brought before the commission. Item 6A is removal of lost inventory items. Emily Shoemate, you have the floor.
Good morning. I have for your consideration this morning a minute order to remove 2 lost items from inventory. The original value of the items is $5,230, and the present net book value of the items is 0.
I want to say something. You said yesterday about the item being laid on top of the, we almost do our cell phones like that.
I've done it.
Lay our cell phone on the bumper and do something, and that's easily done, and that definitely happens.
Yes, sir.
This item requires the approval of property management Commissioner Finley, was this approved by the Property Management Committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it was.
I have a motion to approve the request. No second is necessary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Emily. Item 6B is the inventory removal award sale of service weapon to Sergeant Glenn Pontfield. Colonel Brad Young, you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Coming before you this morning seeking approval for the award and sale of Sergeant Glenn Tom Pointfield's service weapons. He's retiring after over 21 years of service.
This item requires approval from Property Committee. Commissioner Finley, was approved by the Property Management.
Yes, sir, it was.
Have a motion to approve the request. No second is necessary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Item 6C is a Cypress Bayou WMA Horton acquisition. Kevin Mullins, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners, Director. This morning for consideration, we have a minute order that will authorize the Director and staff to move forward with due diligence to purchase a 20-acre in-holding at Cypress Bayou WMA in White County.
This item requires the approval from Property Management. Commissioner Finley, was this approved by Property Management?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it was.
Have a motion to approve the request. No second is necessary. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Item 6D is the Jamestown WMA Craig, Rutherford, and Barnett acquisition. Kevin, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a combination of 2 minute orders that would authorize us to move forward with purchasing 494 acres. That would be in addition to the Jamestown WMA in Independence County.
This item requires the approval of Property Management. Commissioner Finley, was this approved?
Yes, sir, it was.
Have a motion to approve the request. No second is necessary. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved.
Thank you very
Kevin.
much.
Is there any new business to be brought before the commission for today? Is there any old business to be brought before today? Is there a motion or need for an executive session today?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tappan. I believe that we've about covered everything that we need to cover. Before we adjourn, we always give people a chance to say something at this time. And Commissioner Evans White, I'll start over there on the far end. Is there anything you'd like to say before we close?
I just wanted to give a big thank you to all the people that participated in the Delta Waterfowl University Hunt at the beginning of the month. Brett and Luke did so much work. Man, Luke made so much good food. Thanks to Commissioner Doremus and Mr. Bigley and Mikey for helping with that, and Jenny Adams for bringing students up. We had so much fun.
I just want to say, I'm sure glad that it rained, and we've got a little water in our WMAs, GTRs now, but on a more serious note, I would like to challenge the public to get to know your game wardens more. I did this last week in Shea County. We had some new game wardens, and just call them and have lunch with them, or or do whatever, because they're out there doing the job that it has to be done. They're preserving our wildlife, they're continuing our regulations, and they're doing unmitigated work that it's thankless. And I think that it's very important. And I challenge everyone to get to know them, call them, send them a text, do something that, they're not bad guys. They're great guys, they're great women that are out there, and they deserve our recognition.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, as I think back over since our last meeting and the number of great opportunities that have come before our commission, it's always enlightening to me and encouraging over these 3.5 years that I've been associated, is to look out and see without question a team of people, commissioners all the way down to everyone in the agency and volunteers and all, that are completely dedicated, completely sold out to giving the citizens of Arkansas the absolute best resource we can. And regardless of, certain people's thoughts or ideas, make no mistake, everyone here is pulling the rope in the same direction, and no one here wants nothing more than the absolute best of what our citizens deserve. And it's always encouraging to see how people are just not wavered from the mission regardless. They're focused, they're dedicated, and for that, I'm extremely proud to be a part of them and extremely thankful for those folks.
Commissioner Adams?
Rob stole a little bit of my thunder because I'm halfway through my first year.
I read your
and
notes.
And just continue to be impressed by the director and the staff and the talent in this building is incredible. Also want to thank you, Stan, for taking me up to Dave Donaldson and have a meeting with those great folks up there and understand their concerns and know that we're going to work with them and we're going to make this right by everybody. Also, I appreciate Spencer standing up there and taking the heat yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That's a difficult spot to be in for him. We know there's problems, we're working on it, and I think it's important that the public know that we're aware. So, thank you, Spencer.
Commissioner Tappan?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Director and Commissioners and others, I recently was invited to attend a film premiere. It was a film that was created by Dr. Benjamin Garner, who's a Searcy native, professor at UCA, and the subject is the Red River. And beautiful film. It's now been placed on PBS just before turkey season. It's going to be out there, I think, April 11th. I was accompanied by some of our astute staff there that came. Ben Batten was part of a panel, and he and Dr. Lockman talked about this film and some of the effects of that river system. Jen and Trey and Vic joined us, I think, and others. But, it again reminds us of the blessing God has graced us with of some of the wonderful special resources we have. And this film will be shown around the country. It's perceived to be picked up by other PBS systems. And it also exemplifies some of the work we've done in partnerships with NGOs and individuals in that basin. It's incredible. There's still more work to be done. This group, or the author of the film, really discusses minimum flow, like many of our species, other causations. They're seeing a demise of the brown trout and the size of brown trout in that area. I know Commissioner Finley's been an awesome advocate for our trout fishing industry. We've got to continue to back this waterway as well. And I would say, Director, that we really look at deeply this minimum flow debate. It's certainly been discussed over the years of could that put more water in the White River system and cause defects down the way for duck hunters and flooding our WMAs? Perhaps the contrary. Perhaps it would force the Corps of Engineers to hold more water in the spring, knowing that minimum flow has to occur through those drought months and take pressure off. I think we've got to study that further. But I ask you all to just try to find time to watch this film, and particularly if you can put aside April 11th at PBS to watch it. Thank you.
Commissioner Doremus?
Yes, Dr. Evans-White put it perfectly. Thank you to Luke and Brett and volunteers from Delta Waterfowl, and all the students that came out and participated in the university hunt. That's our, third year to do it, or at least mine. And it's all because of you coordinating it, Luke. You take weekends, even, I know, to take these students out to the shooting range to learn how to shoot a shotgun, handle a gun, all that, and get their hunter's ed, I believe, too. So you put a lot of time and effort into this that you don't have to, but you do anyway. So that goes back to what Rob was saying and what Brandon was saying, how much you guys do that, no one will ever know about. So I just appreciate you so much, and I wanted to tell you that. And then coming up next month, we have our meeting up at Black River. I believe we're having 2 meetings, Director Booth. So I hope that as many people that are passionate about the area come out and attend and have their questions and concerns answered.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, it's been a good day, good couple of days. A quick shout out to Sergeant Glenn. The T is for Tom Pointfield, and as we retired his weapon here, I can't help but he's from my district, the B3 district. Tom, too, is one of those quiet, tireless serving type people. He had a military career, full military career, retired from military, and we all should thank him for his service to our country, and then took on 21 years to the service to this agency, and just a great guy. All of the B3 down there looked up to Tom as a leader, so I just wanted to kind of bring his recognition. Bill, you made a great point. Our officers, we've got a lot of young officers that we need to reach out to and encourage the public to do that, as well as us as commissioners and folks to get to know them. And they do a lot more than just check for game violations. They're out there protecting us on our waterways when there's high water time, search and rescue, so much they do to serve us. If Deke Whitback were here, he also heads up a program our foundation does called Get It for Game Wardens. And you can be active in your area to help support that whenever there's one of those programs where they help gather up things that the officers need to better serve us. And then lastly, I'm glad that duck season's about over, and I'm going to hang my gun up, and I'm going to grab a burning torch and get with Randy and some of the burning folks that are about to get crazy, and we're going to try to burn a lot in South Arkansas in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
It's going to be a big smokestack going up.
Those are good days.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Hey, before we close this meeting, as I look out here, I see a lot of accountable and responsible people. Every one of us has a job to do, and I think yesterday in our committee meetings, you saw that we feel like we're accountable and responsible. We want the very best for this agency, the very best. And you know, we quit kicking the can down the road a few years ago, and the things that we do, if it's worth doing right. And I think you could see in our meeting yesterday, we want things to be right. There's just, I never ever wanted to come in second place. And so I look at y'all and that's what I see. Now, right now, I look at Brad and Ben Batten. Brad is tired from hunting season. He's went through several hunting seasons. He's wore out. Ben, it's time for you to get up and step up. And fishing season's coming in, and it's for the next 2 or 3, 4 months. We need to see a lot. It's your time. Well, February, March. Yeah. Ben's had a little rest, and Brad's wore out. So Ben, it's time to step up. Listen, if there's nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting.